Good evening and welcome back to episode 3 of the Hooked on NRL SuperCoach podcast. I'm your host, Xavier, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob. How are we, Jacob?
Good, thanks, guys. Good to be back with another episode. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Another one. We're covering centre wings and fullbacks today. So, yeah, really looking forward to it, mate.
It is, should be good. Just want a little quick shout out to all our subscribers, all our commenters, all the likes so far. We really appreciate it, guys. We read all the comments. We appreciate all the feedback. So thanks for that. Just a reminder again for everyone to join our overall league, and a reminder that the winner will be joining us for an episode on the podcast. The league code is 849156. It'll also be in the description. It's good to see there's already 13 guys in there, so I'm happy that you guys are getting in and amongst it. And then also for the head-to-head league, there's only 9 spots left. So that league code is 372413. So yeah, make sure you guys get in there and it should be a good season.
Perfect, mate. As Jacob said, everyone jump in. Keen to verse everyone and generate our community. Let's touch on the news first, mate. So some big news dropped today at Rabbitohs training with Latrell Mitchell and Cameron Murray both suffering injuries. The Cam Murray injury looks quite serious, and I wouldn't be surprised if he missed the season. So he's done his Achilles, and Latrell has done something with his calf. So he's been ruled out of this game, and he's going to go under further testing, and we don't know if he'll be fit for round 1. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, disappointing for firstly the Rabbitohs, but also for both the individuals themselves, Cam Murray and Latrell. Obviously, Latrell's been a bit injury prone for the past couple seasons, and it looks like that little niggling occurrence, that injury is hanging around. So thoughts are with him, but more so Cameron Murray, who is one of the guys I was actually keen on, as mentioned in the episode last week, gone for the season. I think that is a massive blow now for the Bunnies. And I think their chances of a top 8 finish, like leading up into the season, everyone was really high on the Bunnies, Wayne at the wheel, Latrell, Cam Murray, all good things. I think they'll be lucky to make the 8 now, if I'm honest. What about you?
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think I had a look at their odds after the news come out, and it just pumped into the dollar value for them to finish bottom 4 really came in. I think it reached around $2, which is expected. Latrell, Cam Murray, probably the 2 best players in that side. You've got Cody Walker already under an injury cloud. You've got Campbell Graham, who broke his hand a couple of trainings ago. They're just not having any luck at all. And, I'll probably say those are their 4 best players. And they've got Kaloa Matangi healthy. He's probably their 5th. Well, that's probably rounds out their top 5, and he's the only one healthy out of them. So big concerns coming out of the Rabbitohs camp. And, I think that sort of might shift things a little bit. So we could maybe potentially look at the Rabbitohs being an easy target, at least for the early rounds. So I actually started looking at some Dolphins players today who actually got them in round 1. But we'll touch on that later. Another piece of news that I want to touch on is Jacob Kiraz, who the other day, Gus Gould came out and basically said that he suffered an injury and won't be ready for round 1. It's not back related, which is what the concerns were earlier in preseason. So we're not really quite sure what it is, but pretty much you could almost certainly rule out Jacob Kiraz, Cam Murray, and Latrell all together for SuperCoach, which is a real blow because all 3 of them are quite genuine options when they're playing.
Yeah, I think it really now kind of opens the field up again to more pods, more interesting picks, because, yeah, as you mentioned, all kind of very SuperCoach relevant players, and are now people have holes in their team. As we'll touch on shortly, we can already see here at fullback, Latrell Mitchell at 20% ownership. That's 1/5 of SuperCoaches have him in their sides. So I do suspect that number will pretty much plummet, much like their odds.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's pretty much all the news going around the league, or at least most of it for now. We will get stuck into fullbacks first. Do you want to kick us off, mate?
Sure, mate. So starting off, we have the highest priced player, I'm pretty sure in SuperCoach this year, coming off another amazing season, is James Tedesco. So James Tedesco is priced at 920k that's such an insane average, 94 average last season. but currently only owned in 5% of teams. Now, my thoughts on this are is just too expensive. Like, if you have the money, if you somehow have a couple hundreds of thousands lying around, could be worth the punt just for the pod perspective. But as we will touch into and get into shortly, there are much better fullbacks that I like personally, especially with the Roosters draw and their real lack of team's depth and team strength this year. I'm not too keen on starting with James Tedesco myself. How about you, Xavier?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, mate. As I said, and I've spoken about in previous episodes, I didn't have him last year. I'm not the big like Teddy's obviously a super coach gun. He averaged under 70 coming into last season, and before that he averaged I believe 80 or so. Now he's all the way up at 94. He's got a new halves pairing, and his first two games are the Broncos and the Panthers. And if you're someone like myself who thinks the Broncos are gonna have a bit of a resurgence this year, those are two horror games to start. I could justify spending the money if, as a bit of a pod play, if Tedesco had a gun draw. But the fact is he doesn't, and he's got a new halves pairing. So I pretty much those two things combined with this price turn me off completely from picking him in my side.
Yeah, look, I think we both agree there. Just at that price, like when there's no denying Teddy's one of the greats of NRL and Supercoach, but it's just to start the season, especially with the uncertainty surrounding the Roosters, the hard draw, as you mentioned, to start off with, and that starting price, we're just not keen, and we would probably rather pot up elsewhere. But
Yeah,
moving on to someone who we are, I believe we're both very keen on.
yeah,
This probably the second highest price player this year, Tommy Turbo. Now, what are your thoughts on him, Xavier?
yeah, absolutely massive on him. If you have a look at the Eagles draw, they play the majority. I think it's 5 out of their first 7 at Brookvale Oval. Tom Trbojevic, we all know what he can do. He started off at 1.1 million a couple of seasons ago. I think with that draw and just the quality that he is, he showed at the end of last year when he was playing for the Kangaroos as well that he's, you know, pretty much he's got it, and he always does when he's healthy. It's just a very scary watch not having him, especially with the games he has at the start. So for me, he's absolutely locked into my side. Pretty well one of the first players I picked alongside Cleary, and they haven't moved pretty much all preseason.
Yeah, look, I think you've pretty much touched on it there. Even just looking here at his high scores, he is just one of those players that can go absolutely bonkers.
Yeah,
Like you can
that's
see here, his round one score, his highest score against the Cowboys, who he versus twice in the first 11 rounds, is 229. Like only a handful of players in the whole of Supercoaches that can even get scores even close to that. And this guy, Tommy Turbo, is one of those guys. So yeah, look, for me, even though despite his high starting price of 875K, I think it could still be unders because I believe the Seagulls and Tommy in particular will be keen to have a hot start to the season. And as we can see here with the draw, it does look a bit soft, and they do have plenty of games at Four Pines, where you mentioned at Tommy at Four Pines is just different gravy. So yeah,
yeah.
I think he's almost a must, not quite a must, but he would be if you're paying up for one of the fullbacks, he would be the number one option for me, in my opinion.
That's it, mate. Yeah, not quite a must, but he would be a very tough watch in those first few games, and I'm just not willing to do that. We'll move on to the next one now. Latrell, we've sort of briefly touched on him. Basically, with the calf injury that he's suffered, and we don't know where he's at yet, if he'll be fit for round one. Also, with the other injuries that have suffered to the Bunnies, Campbell Graham, Cody Walker might not play round one. You've got Cam Murray as well. That's a huge part of their core, and I'm just not confident in the Bunnies. Well, as everyone else was to begin with, but now even less so. And he he's very expensive as well. So I think to start the season, just I would rather watch and see how he goes, especially coming back from the injury. And I want to see how the Bunnies go as well. What are your thoughts on him? Just
Yeah,
quickly.
look, mate, completely agree. Latrell, I'm just not sold on. I was somewhat interested before the whole injury news and the whole bombshell we kind of got this morning with the whole Rabbitohs injuries. But yeah, look, I'm just completely off him now. Hey, like there's no interest at all whatsoever. He could be a bit of a mid-season pickup after he's dropped a couple 100K, depending how the Rabbitohs are going, if they get a bit of resurgence or get a bit of form going. But to start the season, absolutely not for me.
Yeah, agreed, mate. We'll go on to the next one, Dylan Edwards. Really quickly, Dill Edwards, he had a career year last year. That was, I believe, basically mainly due to Cleary being out. He took on the goal kicking duties, and became pretty much the focal point of the Panthers attack. You saw him get involved a lot more. He was doing a lot more ball playing. He's already got the work rate, got picked in the New South Wales side. Panthers don't have the best draw to start. I know that they're probably one of the top teams in the comp. But even still, I can't justify that price tag for Dylan Edwards. But you might see him with Luai departing take a bit more ball playing responsibility. So I don't mind. I don't mind the pod play. If I was going a bit of a different route, I would definitely consider him at fullback. Just because he's quite safe with his base, and then you're banking on him basically taking on extra attacking opportunities. With Luai departing the club and stepping up with the ball playing. What are your thoughts on Dill Edwards?
Yeah, look, mate, I think you've pretty much nailed it there. Now, I was a fellow Dylan Edwards owner last year for about 10 rounds, especially when Cleary was out. And look, he absolutely killed it. He was getting like a ton of game just easily as he's got such a high base and work ethic. Like he will knock you out 60 in base. Add in any bit of attacking stats, add in the kicking duties last year, he was tunning every game. Now this year, obviously Nathan's back and he'll have the goal kicking duties. But as you did mention, there is no Luai this season for the Panthers. So I believe it will be, obviously it's going to be Nathan's ship, but I do think Dylan Edwards might be a bit more involved in the swooping plays and attacking plays. So yes, as you mentioned, I would prefer to go a Dylan Edwards sort of over Tedesco as a bit of a pod play. But with the two guys I've got at fullback at the moment, I just can't manage to fit him in. But yes, could not knock anyone from the bye. He's an absolute gun. It's just, who are you willing to go without some of these other guys who have that kicking base as well, or are just freaks and can put out these big scores? Not to say Dylan Edwards can't, though.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Dylan Edwards, I don't mind the buy. I don't hate it. But he's not someone that I'm heavily considering at the moment, as you said, mainly due to the other options available at fullback, and also their draw is not the best to start. They got the Sharks round 1, Roosters who's a bit softer in round 2, and then they go into the Storm in round 3. So realistically, the Panthers can put points on anyone, but how high is he going to go, sort of thing. We'll go on to the next one, who I believe you're very interested in. I am as well. What are your thoughts on KP, mate?
Yes, look, so we have KP coming in a bit cheaper than all the other guys we've just spoken about at a touch under 800K. Look, I think he's in for a big year again this year. Obviously, last year, Kalen Ponga is one of those guys that can just turn it on. Now, he doesn't have quite the same sort of base stats as like a Dylan Edwards, as we just mentioned, but Kalen is the focal point for the Knights. And if the Knights are doing well, Kalen's doing well. This is one of the guys that can ton up in a half. Like as we've seen last year, he can put on 120 points in the first 40 minutes of a football match. Now, he might not kick on with that. He might just settle around there because he does become a bit content, and the coach does like to bring him off early because he is a bit of an injury risk, especially with all his head knocks in the past. But look, for me, at just under 800K with the kicking duties, with a pretty decent draw to start the year, he's in my team at the moment. I am pretty keen on Kalen. What about you, Xavier?
Yeah, mate. I'm quite keen on him too. I don't see. Look, the main thing for him is his quality. He's the main point of attack for the Knights, and the Knights have just an absolutely awesome draw. Besides a bye in round 4, I would find it a very tough watch to not start with him when he's got the Tigers, the Dolphins, and the Titans in the first 3 rounds. It's very hard, and he's at a reasonable price, and he does have the good base. As you touched on, maybe not as good as Dylan Edwards was last year, but he does have the goal kicking, which sort of secures that. And I also think that with the flex this year, as you touched on with the head knocks, they're just picking the points from the top 17 players. So if he did get a head knock very early in the game, most likely that score is going to drop out anyway. So it sort of mitigates a bit of that risk of starting with someone that's, concussion prone or a bit injury prone, like himself. I can't knock the buy at all. I think he's a great purchase. I don't have him at the moment. Funnily enough, I'm really keen on him. I just can't fit him in with the other guy that I want to go with, and also just the structure of my side. We'll touch on it in the center wing, but basically with the Knights having the bye in round 4, I just think it's very hard to run with more than two Knights players. You can do it, you can have 3 Knights players, and try capitalize on the draw, but you're really going to suffer in round 4 when they've got the bye. And that's sort of the thing that I'm weighing up on my side at the moment, which we'll touch on a bit later. But yeah, overall, I completely agree with you, mate. I'm keen on KP as well. Still, definitely considering him, and I think he's a great purchase to start the season.
Good stuff there. I think we both agree then that Kalen and Turbo, we are both really big fans on, and they are both my fullbacks. Well, only one of them my fullback. I'm actually using the flex on one of the other two. But yes,
Yeah,
moving on now. We'll touch on Walshy and Drinky in a bit of a
yeah,
combo sort of mix. Do you want to take off? Because I believe you're a bit keen on one of these two.
yeah, mate. As I said, I don't have KP. I've actually got Reece Walsh on my side. As I touched on a bit earlier in the episode, I'm really keen on the Broncos this year. I think they start red hot. I love their draw to start the season. They play 2 games outside of Queensland, and then I believe their next 4 at Suncorp. All pretty soft games. And I just think I'm a big believer in just Reece. I think he last year he had a game where he scored 4 points. You take that out, and his average skyrockets to near the 80s. I think with the soft run, and Reynolds apparently carrying a bit of a niggle as well, there's potential there. Like, this is going a bit of um, a haymaker. I'm not certain that this will happen, but I think that Walsh could goal kick in round 1. If that happens, he is like, I will be absolutely stoked. I wouldn't be surprised with Reynolds getting a bit older, and he does have a bit of a niggle, a lower body injury. So I'm hoping that happens. I'm not sold on it, but regardless, I'm keen on Walsh because of the draw, and because I believe in the Broncos this year. And he's so cheap compared to some of these other fullbacks as well. He's lower owned. I'm keen to take a bit of a punt on him. Drinkwater, on the other hand, I haven't really considered him. I started with him last year because the Cowboys had a good draw, and Drinkwater's just so reliable. I feel like, I hear people talk about Drinkwater's low base and how he relies on a lot of attacking stats, which to a degree is true, but he just lays on so many try assists. And I think, with Holmes gone, he's a chance to goal kick as well. It'll be himself, or if Duffy starts, and it'll be Duffy, potentially. But if Drinkwater gets the goal kicking too, then I think he could be an option. I just can't. I hate their draw, and I'm not a big fan of the Cowboys this year. They've lost a couple of key players in Valentine Holmes, for example. But at the same time, I don't think the Cowboys are going to fall off a cliff from an attacking standpoint. I still think they're going to pour points on. I'm not low on the Cowboys. I think they'll still be a very good side. And I also think they're one of those teams that, when the expectations are low, they seem to do well. And I think people are sort of writing them off this year. So I'm interested to see how they go, but not for me for round 1, purely based on draw and just uncertainty around goal kicking, and also liking a couple of the other guys. I'll hand it over to you now, mate, with Walsh and Drinky. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, look, I think they're both a bit more of a smoky pod play. I do just believe Ponga and Turbo are just both infinitely better and can both score well more points, especially to start the season, but throughout the whole season as well. Now, we'll go with Drinky first. You mentioned that Holmes has left the Cowboys now. I do think Drinky will get the kicking tee. And so if I were to take on a punt between Drinky and Walshy, I would be more interested, I think, with Drinky, especially taking on the kicking duties if he were to get it. He is definitely the attacking spark and the attacking outlet at the Cowboys now. As you mentioned, no Holmes now. The halves are a bit like obviously Dearden's a gun, but we're still not kind of certain on who's in that 7 jersey. I do think Drinky will be that leader and that playmaker. And as we know, he has a great cutout pass to one of the wingers. So I think obviously not the best draw either, but if you were to be taking a punt and straying away from like a Kalen and a Turbo sort of thing, I'm a little bit keen on Drinky. Now, moving on to Walshy. Walshy's just someone I can't get excited about. Like, I get the Broncos are in for a big season, and I get that Walshy is a gun. Like, I'm not denying he's not a gun. It's just Supercoach wise, he just doesn't accumulate points like any of these other players. He'll have maybe 5, 6 runs, 7, maybe 10 runs a game, sort of thing. He does have a bit of low base, but he can just turn it on just like that. But now with the Broncos, especially predicted to do a lot better this season, I think there's just almost too many mouths to feed now. Like, obviously, Walshy will be one of their main guys, but he's also got to share the limelight now with. You mentioned A-Ray getting a bit older, but he's still a weapon, as is Ben Hunt in the 6. So I feel like they'll really be directing the play. It could actually really work out well for Walshy, I
Yeah.
suppose, and free him up a little bit more. But yeah, look, he's just someone that has just every year I just am never really keen on Walshy just because of that lack of base. And I just feel like he doesn't have those big upside, those 150s that both Ponga and Turbo can easily have on their day. Now, as I said, I don't mind either of these picks as a bit of a smoky pod, depending on who you're sort of feeling. But for me personally, I would be more interested in Drinky out of the two.
Yeah, geez, mate. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I come from the standpoint that Ben Hunt will free Walsh up and create a bit more opportunities. And I do believe in the Broncos, and I also love the ownership for Walsh, and I love his draw, which kind of and his price as well. He's a lot cheaper than some of these other guys. I think those are the main factors that are drawing me into him, and he's just a joy to watch. He's just one of those players that he could he gives you a heart attack after 70 minutes, after being on like 15 points, and then the last 10 minutes he will put on 80 points. He's just one of those sort of players. But that's what we play Supercoach for, you know. Anyway, that's enough on those two. I think we've both set our piece. I'm keen on Walsh, but also not sold on him. I'm still tossing up KP as well there. Just we'll have to see come game day. We'll lightly touch on Kinney and also Hemiso and Pappenhausen, I believe. We might bunch those three up. We can do a light spiel on Chance and Gutherson. I mean, those two I don't really think are too relevant, but I'm happy to hear if you have any words to say on them now. Anything on Chance or Clint?
Nah, look, not particularly. Gutho, I don't know. Gutho is just Gutho, isn't he? Like he'll produce a 60, 65 sort of average by season's end, but he's never going to light your fire. He's never going to win you a matchup in a head-to-head or
No.
make you have that big overall score. And yeah, like just simply for the fact that, and he's also a year older now. I do think he will take on a more advanced role at the Dragons, being the captain and one of the leaders of the team. But yeah, he's just someone I wouldn't get really excited about. Chance is a bit more interesting. He does have a bit of ability, but again, it's the same as what we said before. None of these guys have that upside. And for me, who is all about upside and these big, massive scores that can really be differential and completely set you apart from the pack, you kind of got to have these guys or you don't. And I just feel like both of them just aren't going to hurt you, sort of thing. Out of the two, I would be more keen in Chance, but yeah, nothing really further to say there. What about you?
Yeah, nothing really to touch on. I haven't looked at either of those guys. I agree though. I'd be more keen on Chance out of those two. He's just got a bit more base, I think. We'll touch on Kinney though, who is someone that he's such an exciting player. Gold Coast are a very attacking side. He locked down the fullback spot. I absolutely love watching him. He just goes 100 miles an hour with every carry he does. Look, at 700k, I think that's a really nice price for him, and I would love to have him on my side. I would be very interested in him if he didn't have the bye. It's similar to where we talked about Jaden Campbell at the 6th position, and I said that, you know, Campbell's not the worst buy at 6 in such an uncertain position. It's just, you know, they don't play the first round. And spending that much of your cap, once again, I'll reiterate, on someone in the fullback spot, you're using one of your fullback spots for someone that, you know, you could be coming up against someone with 3-gun fullbacks and you've only got one because you've gone with a Kinney and a Yongi, which we'll touch on later. It just hurts you too much from the point standpoint, and that's pretty much solely the reason I'm not keen on Kinney from round 1. But I definitely am going to be watching him with a keen eye on how the Titans go and how he goes from round 2 onwards. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much nailed it there, especially with fullback being the highest scoring position in Supercoach. I'm just after those absolute guns who can obviously play round 1 and just you start banking the points early doors because, as we said, fullback is where the majority of your top point scorers will come from this year. I'm pretty sure it's been like that for the past couple seasons or so, and I just don't see it not happening. These fullbacks, they have the base, they have the attacking stats, they just accumulate points. And so if you have someone like a Kinney or any of these other sort of fullbacks that, yeah, they're good weapons, they're good fun to watch, they're a bit electric, but they don't have that base, they don't have that kicking, they don't have that big ton ability. It might not hurt you round on round, but I think you'll find out by the time you're round 10, you could be almost 1,000 points behind some of these other guys just
Yeah,
because they just don't reach these heights or limits. So yeah, someone I'm not interested on really.
yeah, fair enough, mate. We'll quickly touch on Pappenhausen, then we'll move to Hammer because we'll start with Pappenhausen because I think he's in a bit of a similar boat to Kinney. Just he's got the buy in round 2. I think 616k is like I look at that and I think about Ryan Pappenhausen, his ability, and from a couple of seasons ago and his heights. You know, he's had a bit of a disappointing year last year himself from a Supercoach standpoint. Just he didn't look the same, which is completely fair enough. You know, after coming back from the injuries that he's come back from. Um, I absolutely love Pappy as a player and as a person off the field. I think he's a great role model. And, you know, it's great to see him in our game. Pappenhausen is just great for the game. And he's one of those players that's, you know, so likable. For Supercoach, 600k is such a good price tag for him. But once again, as I said, with Kinney, he's got a buy in round 2. And in the fullback spot, I'm just not willing to pick someone with a bad draw. You know, it's very important. This is the point scoring position. And you need at least 2 of these guys that can score good points for you to start off the season. What are your thoughts on Pappenhausen?
Yeah, look, first of all, yeah, absolutely love Pappy as a player. You do see it though, like especially last season, I think we've noticed his confidence has really fallen off a cliff. So to start with Pappenhausen, especially with the draw in round 2, I wouldn't be a big fan on. I think that price is completely unders though. But for
Yeah,
me, it would be someone where I need to see them play, put a string of games together, kind of get that confidence back. And then maybe when the draw opens up for the Storm, he could then be a bit of a purchase, depending on how our cash is going. It could be a perfect time or a perfect upgrade target to upgrade to. But yeah, look, I do like that ownership at 10%. I think,
yeah,
but just yeah, just with the draw, just with his confidence, everything, he's a decent one to take a punt on if you're going like 3-gun fullbacks and he's like your 3rd gun fullback.
yeah.
I don't mind that play at all. I quite like it actually, but it is a risk. It's a bit of a risk and a risk just I'm not willing to take.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. I actually don't mind him as a pick at all for the price. Yeah, once again, it's just the draw. You could start with him as a 3rd fullback. I don't think you could start with him or Kenny, and then go Yongi as well in the 3rd spot. I think you're giving up far too many points. And we'll move on now to Hamiso. Sorry, before we do that, I'll touch a bit more on Pappy. I don't think he will be goal kicking this year. Put that out there. I think it will stick with Meany as well, which is a bit of a hindrance on him. But I do think the Storm draw opens up from round 4 onwards, and you could potentially start looking at him then. And I think he's also going to have a lot better season this year. I just don't like it for round 1. Anything more on him, mate, or we'll move on to Hammer?
No, I think we've pretty much covered him.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Hammer, mate?
Yeah, look, especially as you mentioned now with the bunnies in round one, which is suddenly a bit of a green fixture sort of thing. He's a little bit interesting. Now, he's
Yeah.
similar to these guys that they're not a very base dependent attacking fullback. They are the attacking outlet. They require, similar to your Walshy, they require these attacking stats. They require the tries, the line break assists. And now this is to say, not to say that Hammer can't do that. Like we have
Yeah.
seen him. He can split open a field and gun. He's one of the quickest players in the NRL. And obviously being in a bit of a weaker side, so to say, in the Dolphins, he will be a bit of a focal point as well. But yeah, look, again, he's another decent little pod. If you're backing in the Finns for a bit of a good start to the season, and we'll touch on one of the ones who I'm a bit very interested in center wing, but I just think at fullback, as we've mentioned, with the other players and the other abilities who can just ton up so easily, it takes Hammer a lot to ton up. Not to say that he can't ton up, but to turn up consistently, I just don't see it. What about you, Xavier? What do you think there?
I actually quite like the Hammer play. If I was going a pod play at fullback, this would be as a third fullback for me. It would be the Hammer. I think he's the Dolphins draw. I absolutely love their draw. And I think Hammer's very good odds to score almost every game. As we said, he doesn't have the base, but I think he's one of those guys that could go on a run and he could start the season hot and start and catch a few people by surprise. I quite like the pod play on Hammer. I would go him over pretty much all those guys we've mentioned in Pappenhausen, Kenny, etc. to start, and Chance and Gutho from round one. I like his draw. I like his odds to basically put on attacking stats to the start and get off to a fast start, more so than those other guys. So I don't mind it as a bit of a pod play.
Yeah, look, I agree with you with that. I would take him as well over all the other options. The one thing that does hurt him this year is he doesn't have that center wing fullback dual
Yeah,
flexibility, which was so awesome last year. But this time being solely at fullback, I just think that kind of hurts his ownership, especially because if he was at CTW, it'd be a whole different story. I'd love to get him, but yeah, just in fullback with the fullback selections we have this year, I just can't managed to squeeze him in. But yeah, I think he's a great pod play, especially if you're going with the three sort of gun fullback plus spot. He would be the one I'd be very interested in taking that third spot.
yeah, agree,
So
mate. We might move down. Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say I'll quickly just mention Buller. This is just more
Yeah, I
so.
was going to touch on him too.
Yeah, very good, mate. Just from a Tigers perspective, I think he's going to have a really good year this year. Like,
Yeah,
obviously, we've got Lawai there now. He's had a couple years to develop, couple years to get, but he is still only a kid. We got to remember that he's turning into a man now, sort of thing. And I really do like this play. It's an extremely rogue pick. Like it's certainly cast and away from the crowd, sort of thing. And he doesn't have that. He
yeah,
doesn't have that kicking ability or the sort of high base numbers that some of these other gun fullbacks do. But like as a third fullback option for like 100K cheaper than a who have we just touched on? We've just touched on Hammer. Like I really don't mind it, especially if you're going with that third fullback. And at 2% ownership, I think he's in for a big year. And I think I would not be surprised if we see Dream Buller 750K excess this year at some point throughout the season. That's my bit of a bold play. Any quick words on him, Zave?
yeah. I completely agree, mate. I think he's definitely value at the price, similar to a lot of these guys that we've spoken about. I think you look at them and what they can produce, and I think they're unders. I think Buller's unders. I think Pappenhausen was unders. I think Hammer is slightly unders as well. Buller definitely, without a doubt, will average more than what he's priced at 58. He had a bit of a down year last year. You can expect the Tigers to go better. It's just one, it's an awkward price, and two, he's not in the same echelon as a lot of these other guys that we've spoken about, especially at the start of the video. He's not going to massively hurt you, but once again, I don't mind it. I don't think he's going to drop in value, and I like the Tigers more than I did last year. So look, it's definitely a rogue play. But yeah, I can't look. I mean, yeah, if you had Buller in your side, because you're back in the Tigers. I don't mind it, but once again, it's just a bit at fullback. I think you want to lock in the best guys, and not go for these sort of value picks. I think you go for the value elsewhere and you lock in your points at fullback. Do you agree with that, mate?
Yeah, look, I think we're both on that strategy, as we've mentioned kind of throughout this fullback discussion. Fullbacks is just a position where it scores the most points in Supercoach, and I'm all about locking in those sort of points. But this year will be a bit interesting, as we're about to touch on, because I believe we have a cheapie, and he could be a good little cheapie this year.
Yeah.
We mentioned KO Weeks in our last episode. There's no other options here apart from there he is,
Yeah.
Isaiah. What are your thoughts on him, Xavier?
Oh man, I've gone back and forth a lot of the time on this. There's been times in the preseason where I've been set on 3-gun fullbacks, and if I was going that route, I'll tell you right now, it would be without a doubt, it would be Turbo, Walsh, and Ponga. Those would be my 3. I would tinker with the idea of Hammer, just with that Bunnies news and with their draw, but probably would lean towards those 3 if I was going the 3-gun. The issue with that, though, is what it does to the rest of your side. And Yongi, without a doubt, is going to make good cash. There's no denying that. And I know we just spoke about points being the main sort of caveat in this position. That's what you go for. So it's kind of, it's really tough. You can bank the points and pretty much just hope the cheapies come elsewhere. I also hate the ownership. 52%, you're jumping on with half of Supercoach on this guy when you could go elsewhere with 3 fullbacks and completely go away from the pack and lock in points and get ahead of the pack. I think that's a really good idea. And then, by round 3, you can downgrade to Yongi if he looks like he's set to make heaps of cash. He's also got the Storm in round 1. So I'm, whilst I think he's tremendous value, he's going to make a lot of cash like everyone, like pretty much half a Supercoach does. I'm not fully sold on it, but I'm tending to lean more towards him just because of it looks like this year we're going to really struggle for good money making options from the start. We've got bugger all centre wings this year. It looks like we've got Toya and Purdue. Those are the only 2 that I'm really confident in picking. We'll touch on those centre wings later, but that's a bit of an issue and sort of leans me a bit more into Yongi. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I'm not in camp Yongi or camp 3-gun fullbacks yet. I've got Yongi in my team at the moment, but I could easily see that changing. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, look, I think as we already touched on that, this kind of feels like Dream Buller from a couple years ago, right? Like
Yeah.
some absolute cheapy guy who I do agree, no doubt, he will be 500k by like round 10 sort of thing. He will just because he's a fullback, right? He seems like he's got a bit of attacking stats in him. I believe he got a try assist in one of the trial games. He will score on average around 50 to 60 sort of thing. He won't have the big scores that the other gun fullbacks will, but I think at the start of the season to just bank that cash early on, make a couple easy 200, 300k on him and then flip him to one of the other options while banking points in kind of other positions might be a play. But yeah, like as you mentioned, like I'm keen, but this does come down to what strategy you're going to pick, whether you go with the 3-gun fullback strategy or you go with the 2 fullbacks, being one in flex, one in fullback, and then Ongi as your other fullback. So yeah, look, I am more on the camp of get him in, secure the cash, make the cash, and then use that cash elsewhere by like round 10, spread those funds out and upgrade other positions. Because yeah, as you mentioned, we don't have that many real clear cut cheapies this year. And he is definitely, for me, like one of the picks of the bunch of them. It's just such a shame that he's in the fullback position and you can only get him in fullback.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely agree, mate. And I also like to look at it from this perspective, which is in Yongi's favour, is what for you to pick 3-gun fullbacks. Say you go with what I said before, a Turbo, a Ponga, and a Walsh. what do you need Yongi to score for that to be a good play? Look, he's got the Storm and the Dogs. Realistically, pretty much the rest of SuperCoach are going to have two other gun fullbacks, right? So you only got one head up on them. I think for you to be winning that play, Yongi needs to score about 35 points when you do the math and how you spread that cash around the rest of your side as well. I just can't see Yongi averaging 35 points or so for the first 3 rounds. He could, but you also need that third guy to score about 80 points. Average it in the 70s to 80s for it to work out for you. There's a lot of things that need to work out for that to be a good play, and it's a lower percentage play, I think. But it's also not one that I am fully against just because of how many people are on Yongi, and I think that it could happen. Yongi comes out, absolutely shits the bed, and you pick a third guy, and all 3 of your fullbacks are averaging 80 points or so, and you're absolutely laughing. You've kicked clear, and you don't have to. You made the right choice, and you've also got the safety net with the 3 fullbacks as well. On the other side, you've got the safety net of going 3 fullbacks and then dropping down to him if he only looks like he's going to make cash, and then spreading it elsewhere. So, look, I'm more. I can't decipher right now, but Yongi is in my side based on the fact that the probability of him going rubbish and me nailing that third fullback that no one's going to have, and is too low for me. Like, I don't think Yongi's going to come out and shit the bed and score 35 points, and there's going to be a third fullback that we all need to have. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to what sort of strategy you're running this year at fullback, and in particular the flex as well. It's just how you manage that, and whatever strategy you as a super coach are going with it. There's no right or wrong strategy. It just, especially being the first year of the flex, this might be something we look back on in, say, 6 months' time, or a couple rounds. Who knows? It could even be a couple rounds in. It's like, yeah, look, we should have got him, or yeah, look, we shouldn't have got him. We should have started with 3 gun fullbacks. So it will be interesting to kind of see how that all unfolds.
That's it, mate. And I guess one more way to put it with this flex position is, if we didn't have that, Yongi was there, and we only got to pick 2 positions, I don't think I'd start with him. So, we get 3 fullbacks now and the option to pick 3, and we start with him. It's just a bit of I guess, something to think about, and something I'm still thinking about, because I know that if we took that flex away and we only had 2 fullback positions, I would not pick Yongi. There's no way. You're giving up too many points. But now we've got three fullback positions, and all of a sudden, it's fine to generate cash there. I'm not fully sold on it, but it's just something to have a think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be good to see how it unfolds. And yeah, as we said, this is the first year of the flex, so kind of no one really knows the best way to do it or the best way not to do it. So yes, it's a very independent strategy based focus. Whatever you as a super coach are feeling, like, there's no right or wrong. We don't know how it works and what the best strategy is yet. So yeah, I reckon the winner this year will have nailed that strategy though.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Let's move on to some center wings.
Let's get stuck into it. So, kicking us off here with the highest price center wing, Val Holmes. Look, at 785K, he's just under 800K. He's the same price of Kalen Ponga. Now, if you're telling me, are you taking a Kalen Ponga or Valentine Holmes at the Dragons? You're taking Kalen Ponga twice on Sundays. Like, that's just ridiculous. There's no denying Holmes is a gun, but I think this year we'll see that average of 80 massively decline. I think it'll drop back to low 70s sort of thing. At the Dragons, nowhere near as much attack as the Cowboys. He obviously will still be kicking for the Dragons, but yeah, look, 785K, I just don't have any interest in him whatsoever. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to tie in Holmes and Lomax into this, because I sort of feel like they kind of come in the same boat. Both the two top scoring centre wings have moved to new clubs, and Lomax has actually gone to a new position. So on those factors alone, I am not interested at those price tags. Same as what you said. Like, would I rather a Holmes or a Lomax or a Ponga? It's Ponga every day of the week. I can't justify the price. We don't know how they're going to perform in the new teams. Holmes has gone to a worse attacking side, and Lomax has gone to a new position. And I just think that's not the way that I would be looking to spend my money. If I had to pick between one or the other, I'll go Lomax. However, what about you, mate?
Yeah, if I had to pick out of the two, actually, I would go Holmes. But yeah, as
Jeez.
I just don't like Lomax in the centers. Like, I think that his highest averaging season last year came as a result of him being on the wing and him being on the end of those attacking stats. Now, I know all rumors out of Parramatta are him and Riles are getting on like a house on fire, and that he's going to unlock the best out of him at center. But I think Lomax is just a bit stubborn. I think his best position for the team is on the wing. Like, he's a great try scorer. He knows how to score the tries. He's also a great kicker. Like, he can just bank those points as well. But yeah, look, I'm not interested in either of these two blokes to start the season. That's for sure.
Yeah, mate. I completely agree with you there. Lomax, on at centre doesn't. We don't. I would much prefer him on the wing, to be sure. And Holmes, yeah, just he's in a worse attacking side, and they're both just priced too high. Should we move on to this next guy,
Yeah,
Herbie
this
Farmer?
Herbie Farmworth. Now he is a bit of an interesting pick. Look, he is out of the bunch of the top range guys. He is someone I'd be really interested in. Like, as
Yeah,
we've mentioned here, the Dolphins do have a great draw to start the year now, and Herbie is just a gun. Like, he gets through work. He has that solid as base. He can have those generate the attacking stats. He gets the try assists. He gets the tackle breaks. He gets the offloads. He's just one of these guys that can do it all. And we kind of saw him last year really come into his element and come into his own. I think that's the best season he's had yet, but I think he could be on for another big season. So yeah, the only caveat with him is that price tag at 730K and juggling around our sort of budget. But I love that ownership as well. At 4%
yeah.
ownership, now he doesn't have the kicking like some of these other center wings, but like I really do like that play as a smoky sort of thing. How about you? What are your thoughts on him?
Absolutely same boat, mate. I absolutely love the Herbie Farmworth play as a bit of a pod play. As you said, the price tag's the caveat for him, but the Dolphins draw and Herbie's base, he's got such a strong base. He takes so many carries, he offloads, he breaks tackles. I quite like it. It's just the price tag. If you, I can't fit him in, but I'm really looking to somehow free up funds and get him in at the moment. He's definitely someone that I'm very interested in. And I think, after round one finishes or round two, he's someone that we could look back on and go, shit, we should have started with Herbie. I can't knock the buy for anyone doing it and paying up for him. He's, as soon as Carraz went down, who's just below him, he was someone that I instantly sort of looked to, just to sort of keep my structure. But then I ended up opting for a bit of a different build. Yeah, can't knock the buy, as you said, mate. Anything more on him, or should we move on to Dom Young?
Yeah, I think we've covered it. And then, yeah, as we've mentioned with Kraz, obviously not being fit for round one, it's just an automatic no-go. Wait till he
Yeah,
comes back. Wait to see how he comes back. We don't know what sort of the injury really even is yet and how severe it is. There's not been much information out as of the time of recording. So, yeah, look, just no interest there. Now, moving on to Dom Young, he is someone that can hurt you. He's one of these guys that can just put on a big score, as we saw last year. In saying that though, he also has no base. He is one of these guys that can just sit out on the wing and end up finishing on 30 points. Now, for me, I'm not keen on him this year. I had him last year. I had him for his good run. I had him and I banked a bunch of points. But this year at 700K, I am just not interested whatsoever, especially as we've kind of touched on with the Chookies. We think they're both going to decline this year
yeah,
from their success from last year. And as with the ball quality, like he had Joey Manu inside of him. Obviously, it's a bit of a thing, ball hog Joey Manu, but I think the stats actually proved they did better when Dom Young did better when Joey was in the side with him there because he just he generates defenders attention and everything. And I now think Dom Young will be a bit of a target, and the defenders will be aware. So yeah, look, at 700K, I'm not really interested in him whatsoever. What about you?
Yeah, mate. I'm same boat. What we can do, we'll partner up him and Dan Turbo, both the Roosters wingers, sort of in the same conversation. They're both very highly priced, and as we've sort of reiterated throughout these three podcasts, we just the Roosters draw is no good at all. They've got the Broncos and the Panthers. They've got Chad Townsend at halfback, who yeah, I don't want to talk negatively about players, but I don't think he's up to first grade level anymore. He's had a great career and won a premiership, but I think any side with Chad Townsend at halfback, unfortunately, he's not going to go very far. That's just my opinion. And I don't have faith in either of these guys. Dom Young has almost no base, and Dan Tupou does have he does take a few more carries and offloads, and he's a bit safer. But in terms of Roosters attack with that draw, with those halves, I couldn't go near them at that price myself.
Yeah, look, I think we both agree there, and my sentiments are the exact same with Tupu as the same with Dom Young. So I think moving on, we can group these two together as well, Gagai and Fletcher Sharp. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on those two?
yeah, mate. I'll start with Fletcher Sharp. I don't like the purchase for Supercoach so much, but I think he's an electric player. I think he's awesome to watch. I think the Knights moving him to the sixth position is also a very positive sign for them. They need someone, you know, I like it for them, for the club. I think it's a good move for the club just because um, it's not going to go very far if you pick two sort of mid halves and like a gamble and a cogger. You need someone to take attention off Ponga, um, who can, that the defense is going to be looking at. And Fletcher Sharp needs a ball in his hands. He's electric. He's going to attract defenders. The question is on with his defense. But this is talking more from a footy perspective than Supercoach. I like the move for the Knights, personally. For Supercoach though, I couldn't touch him at that price. I just think it's too much to pay. Too much to pay for someone that we haven't seen play in the six jumper. He could come out and light it up, but I'm not willing to pay that price tag for an unknown sort of thing. But at the same time, I don't mind the pod play with the Night Shore too. Gagai, someone that's safe as houses. He's 1% owned. Jeez. Look, with Gagai, I think once again it's just the price tag for me. He could come out and score a couple of tries. He's got really good base. I definitely prefer these two guys over Dom Young and Daniel Tupou though. But they're also not. I haven't really had a look at these guys personally. What are your thoughts on Fletcher Sharp and Gagai?
Yeah, as you said with Sharp, the unknown's just too much of a query for me. Not interested at all. Gagai is funny, right? Every year he averages 65 to 70, and he just does it. You finish the end of the season being like, wow, how's he done that again?
Yeah.
Now the caveat now with him is he's a year older, so obviously you have that question marks. But how long have we been saying this now? That it's just the 700K price tag, especially with some of the other cheaper options, which could have more upside. I don't think Gagai is one of the guys that can ton up all the time. He might get the occasional double and ton up sort of thing, but he's not going to consistently be tunning up this year. He's more of a base stat beast. But yeah, he's an interesting one. Not for me personally, but if you wanted to, he's a great draft pick. I'll say. I think he's a great draft pick, but in classic Supercoach, not someone I'd be using one of my 7 center wing spots on to start with anyway. So moving on now, we got who should we group together? We'll group the three Sharkies together, and then we'll touch on To'o and Garrett because they're a bit more popular. We'll
Yeah.
touch on Ronnie, Iro, and Ramian. Any interest there?
Not really. Look, I'll start off with talking about Iro. He was a great cheapie for us last year, and he has absolute like unreal base. He takes so many carries and makes a lot of tackles. He's safe as houses. I don't think he's going to drop too much in value purely because of that. And I also am a big believer in the Sharks starting off hot this year. I'm tipping them to actually win against the Panthers in round one in Vegas. I I I think Iro is very safe, and he's not gonna. I don't think. I think if you're looking for upside Sharks players, he's not going to be too much of a part of it. But he's a very safe, quite a safe floor. But for 640K, I don't want guys with safe floors. I want guys that are with a bit more upside, especially in my center wing. Ronaldo and Raymond, however, Raymond's sort of similar boat to Iro, quite decent base. But yeah, personally, not really looking at him too much. You know, Panthers round one for all of these guys, and you know, they're all grouped in the same sort of price bracket because they all sort of share the workload evenly. That Sharks back five do a lot of work, but it's not like one guy is carrying the workload completely. They all sort of split it up amongst themselves. Ronaldo is the high upside play of them all. He is the one, you know, I've owned pretty much every season I've had him, but he's someone that you pick for going on runs. And I don't think the definition of going on runs is playing the Panthers in round one, even though I'm tipping them to win. He's just a bit of a scary own because he doesn't base too much. And also, especially in round one when the points are lower, Vegas, the field is a bit more narrow too, so less likely for points. I wouldn't be interested in Ronaldo. So in short, I'm not really looking at any of those guys. What about you, mate?
Yeah, look, I would agree to most of that. Out of the bunch of them, I would be most interested in Iro. I think it was only his debut season last year, and what a season he had. Like, he was obviously one of the kind of cheapies that we could end up keeping and holding for the whole year. His base is incredible. He gets to his work. As we've kind of mentioned, none of these guys, apart from maybe Ronnie, they have these massive big scores in him. Ronnie can be on the back of a hat trick and ton up sort of thing, but more often than not, I find watching Ronnie and you see him with 20 points at halftime. Like, he just doesn't have the base. And to start out the season, yeah, look, I'm just not interested in either three of those guys to begin with. They could be someone, as you mentioned, when the Sharks draw opens up a bit more and they have a bit of an easier draw. I think you might find they might be at a bit of a discount as well. It could be a bit of an upside, bit of an upgrade target to target. But yeah, to start off with from round one, not interested in all three of them, if I'm honest. Now, moving on to someone who, well, two of them that both have a lot of interest from both of us and also the community, Tor and Garrick. What are your thoughts on these two, and why are you starting with Garrick?
Yeah, mate. Garrick's pretty well been locked in my side for a very long time now. I'll sort of group him in that same combo with Turbo. Turbo and the Eagles and Garrick and the Eagles, they have such a good draw to start the season. And Garrick is just so consistent. He's done it for year after year. It doesn't matter what position he plays, whether it's fullback, wing, center. He'll be in the centers this year, but he just does it. He does it year after year. He'll be goal kicking again. He'll be in a side that I think is going to put on a lot of points in those first few rounds with their draw. And I think he's just underpriced too, with the head knocks and the early HIAs and injuries that he had last season. I captained him for a game where he got knocked out and scored like sub 10 points last year, which is absolutely brutal. But you know, when he plays the 80 minutes, he's just safe as houses. So I think he's a great purchase. Tyler is someone I'm a bit less keen on. Similar to what we spoke about with Dylan Edwards. You know, I think he's got decent base, but his base has definitely dropped off the last two seasons to where it was, I think, maybe three seasons ago. But like we're talking about Brian Tyler as well. He's the best winger in the world playing for the best team in the world too, on the NRL. So I just don't have faith that the Panthers are going to come out and beat teams with their attack to start off with, especially with new combinations forming with Talangi, Papali'i coming to the club. You got McLean and Alamodu, who haven't really played much footy in that side either. So I don't think they're going to come out and blitz teams. And, I don't mind the To'o buy, but I'm all in on Garrick. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, I'll start with the one who I'm less interested on in To'o. I think, as you mentioned, his base stats have kind of, as well as attacking stats, has been down in the past couple of seasons. And it's because he is such a gun winger that the opposing teams just don't kick to him. They will kick to the other winger every single set. They will kick purposely away from To'o because he is such a strong returner of the ball, which is where he generated a lot of his base stats because he would return the ball, get 3 or 4 tackle breaks. He'd do that 10 times, 15 times a game. He can just churn through work. But yeah, as I mentioned, that teams know that now and they know to kick away from him because he is so damaging. So yeah, I think at that price, I think it is a good pod play, to be fair. I think it is
Yeah.
a good pod play. I think there is a bit of potential and he does have the upside. He is one of these guys that can ton up and can go ton sort of thing because he does have that good sort of base. But yeah, look, to start the season off at that price, I just don't have the money for him. And then moving on to now, this is so hard. Garrick. Garrick is currently not in my team at the moment, but I've had him and pretty much started with him for the past couple years. It's just this. I just don't have the funds, especially going in with the double gun fullback and double gun halfback strategy. I just can't manage to get up to a Ruben Garrick at the moment. This is obviously subject to change, but like I can't knock any of your comments. I think he is a great buy. He is a gun. He does just do it every year. We've seen that now. It doesn't matter, as you mentioned, wing, center, wherever he is on that pitch, he does well. Add in the kicking, which does wonders for his base. Is a good buy. Look, he's a good buy. He is expensive at 680K, but he is definitely someone I would prefer to own compared to a lot of these other guys that we've previously touched on. But yeah, it's just am I willing to go up to a Ruben Garrick price tag and compromise other parts of my team? I'm just not sure on that yet. But yeah, certainly can't knock the buy, but I do think he is someone you can go without.
Yeah. Look, you can never not go without. Sorry, you can always antipod anyone. Doesn't matter who it is. I'm a big believer in that. But I do think Garrick is a great buy. And for me, for any high price centre wing, here's my pick of the bunch. And it seems like most of the community agrees with that with his ownership at 32%, which makes it even tougher if you're antipodding him with their draw, watching Sea Eagles games, knowing that a third of Supercoach own him. It's just, I'm not, I thought he was a great buy to begin with, but the ownership makes it even harder. You could just fall right back to the pack if Manly start putting on a lot of points.
Yeah, I think that ownership, to be fair, it is quite high, right? It's 32%, and it's a lot higher than any of these other center wings we've touched on so far. Like, he is
Yeah.
the guy that super coaches are flocking towards, which I wouldn't disagree with. I think if you're paying up in this position, he kind of is the one to target. I still don't mind Herbie though, but
Yeah.
Herbie is on top of that. He's 50K more. Like for 50K less, I would probably just prefer Garrick, depending on how the funds were looking. But touching on the Dolphins and Hervey, I think we'll move on to Jermaine Osaka, who is someone I'm extremely keen on this year to start the season. Any comments on him first, Xavier?
Yeah. Look, I tied in with Herbie. Herbie doesn't pass much, which is not good for Osaka's super coach. But what I guess a positive with Osako is the draw. He's on the wing, so basically any sort of attack where it's a cutout ball, Osako is pretty much going to get a line break or score. I don't trust when Herbie gets the ball that Osako is going to touch the ball, to be honest. I love the draw. I love that he's, on the wing. I just wish he was on the other side, not on Herbie's side, because I think he would get a bit more touches out there in attacking positions. And I love that he's a goal kicker too. So I can't knock the buy. I do think he's actually quite a good pod play at 9% too. Yeah. Well, what are your reasons for interest in him, mate?
Yeah, so he's in my team at the moment, and it is, as you mentioned, he's under 10% ownership. The Dolphins do have quite a nice draw to start the season, and he's one of these guys who's always up there in the top point scorers year on year. I think for the past 2 or 3 years, he's been consistently in that top five. I believe he actually won it not last year, but the year before. It just shows the ability of he can score tries, and the Dolphins can score tries, and he's also a bit of a sharpshooter as well. He's
Yeah,
quite a good kicker. So it does accumulate the points. He also has a bit of not quite as good as base stats as some of these other guns, but he can easily base 40. I think if he doesn't score, you're looking at between a 40 to 60 score, depending on how many tries sort of the Dolphins have scored. But adding a try in there, he could be turning up sort of thing. And he is someone, especially with that draw and with that ownership, could kind of set me apart. And I think at 616K, I think it's great value compared to some of the other guys we've touched on. So yeah, for me, he's someone I'm pretty keen to start the season with at this point in time.
yeah. Can't disagree with any of the points there, Matt. I think he's quite a good buy. I've just got other guys a little bit. At the moment, I'm tossing up, but and we might move on to one of those guys because he's right below Osako here, and it's Dylan Lucas. So for the same price, pretty much, yeah, exactly the same price. I prefer Dylan Lucas this year. Um, but I have toyed with the idea of moving things around to fit them both in or to fit Osako over Lucas. But I think I'm 100% set on Lucas this year. I just think he will definitely play 80 minutes on the left edge this year, which is KP's favourite side. We look back to Lockie Fitzgibbon a couple of years ago, the lines he was running. And Lucas is, sorry to Fitzgibbon, but he's 10 times a player that Fitzgibbon is. He came up the grades as a winger as well, I believe, and he's been converted sort of Lockie Lewis style. Is it Lockie Lewis? No. I can't remember. He played for the Sharks. Luke Lewis. Luke
Oh,
Lewis.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So
a
he was a winger converted to center, converted to a It just shows that we're born in the year 2000, mate. He was struggling to figure out his name there, but yeah, he's sort of like that. He's a very hard worker. He's got such high base because he's always looking for the ball. He's one of those players that if he's not getting any ball out there, he'll go in and look for a run. He makes a million tackles. He's always involved. He's on the favored edge of Ponga. He runs a great line. I really, really am big on him this year, and obviously I said 100%, but I'm 99% sure I will be starting with him this year. I love the duel as well.
Yeah, I think as we touched on kind of in our last episode as well, we are both keen on Dylan Lucas this year. And it's kind of just where do you fit him in? Do you fit him at second row forward or do you fit him at center? At the moment, he is currently in my second row forward with one of the guys who we'll get to shortly, who is now a bit of uncertainty around, but that was my sort of idea to be able to flick those two up and down. But yeah, look, Dylan Lucas, he's in my side as well. I'm keen on both these players. I think they're both like with that ownership, so I think they're really good point of differences. And I
Yep.
think these could be players that can kind of set you apart from some of the other picks that we've kind of discussed already. And I'm big on both of them as we've kind of mentioned. So yeah, moving on now. None of these guys have much ownership, so we won't really touch on any of them. Do
Yeah,
you have
nah, not just having a look.
any
There's
thoughts
no
on
one.
anyone so far?
I had a brief, tiny little look at Connor Tracy, to be honest, but I've sort of faded away from that idea. As I've said in previous episodes, I've been quite big on the dogs. Tracy's going to be the fullback. He put like 150 points on the Broncos last year. So, he's got the Titans in round two and the Dragons in round one. I could see him doing that or putting a bit of a score on. Just this price tag, it's 587K. It's not cheap. I don't think I'll start with him, but I actually really don't mind him as a bit of a pod play. But other than that, mate, no one's really standing out to me in this price range.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, sort of Blaze much in the 5A discussion. don't mind it, but someone we're not really interested in. Now, here's one that definitely sparks my attention, and I'm sure you're excited for him to be on the wing to start the season for your Wars. RTS. What do you think about him, especially on the wing now?
Mate, is another one. There's so many centre wings this year that I'm really keen on. Roger, I I love it. I love that buy too. He's not currently in my side. I've tried to rearrange things so I could absolutely stack my center wing, but I just can't make it work. And I also don't think we're going to get many cheapies there, as I've touched on. I I think there's only room for him to go up this year. You look at his attacking stats last year playing in the centres. He scored like 3 tries last season, I believe. Let me just quickly fact check that. He
While you're,
scored.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
While you're checking that, I'll just say my little 2 cents on him as well. Yeah, look, he is someone that is in my side, especially now he's been confirmed to be playing on the wing in place of DWZ, at least for the first couple rounds anyway. I think, as you mentioned, now being on the wing, the ability to score tries, he has that base. He is an absolute gun from the past. I think at 550K, I think it's a great buy. And one of these, another guys that I'm really surprised at the ownership, same as your Dylan Lucas's and yeah, Sarko's. I think at 14% ownership even, I think it's a
yeah,
great buy. And I think, yeah, like it's a good buy. Nothing more I can really say. Yeah.
yeah. He scored 5 tries, mate. And I completely agree with you. He's a great buy. He scored 5 tries in 18 games as a back. Um, I put absolute the house on it that he will get more attack this year on the wing. He's definitely going to score more tries than that. Even on a what I believe will be a weaker Warriors side, unfortunately, this year. He's going to get more attacking stats, I believe. He's at a very good price. We've seen the base. He's got the base. It's his second year back in NRL. I think he got rid of a bit of rust last year. So I don't see him going down on that price, and I think he's a great purchase and someone that I'm looking to fit in my side. And I might tie him in to this next guy, Ali Leotawa, who's down in the low 500s. There he is.
There is.
He is an absolute wrecking ball. Watching that trial the other day against the Storm, he just showed everyone what he can do. You know, he's been coming up the grades and had massive raps on him as a centre at the Warriors. And did you watch that game at all?
No, I missed that one. I watched the highlights, so I saw the big barracking big fella, but yeah, I didn't manage to catch it.
Mate, he is an absolute beast. I'm so tempted to start with him. Him or Roger. Look, just because of watching him play, he's an absolute tank. I think really highly of him as a player. Just the price tag is if he was 400K, I'm picking him. If he was 100K less, I'm picking him. It's just 513K is a bit of an awkward price. I don't know how much ball he's going to get on the right center. He's also a center and not um you know I definitely prefer wingers in Supercoach, but I quite like him at 2%, and for what he can do, I think he's a bit of an exciting pod play, but you know and he does have the upside. Yeah, any thoughts on him, mate?
Not particularly. I think I'd be more interested, as you mentioned, with RTS on the wing. As you said, he scored 5 tries last year and averaged 57. Like this year, he's only going to be better. He's going to get way more attack. I would just be way more interested in RTS. And then in that case, I wouldn't be doubling up on the WAS sort of centers and wingers, just because, as you've kind of mentioned, I don't think they'll be doing nearly as well this year as they did the past couple seasons. Not to say that I don't think he can't do well. It's just for someone who we'll touch on next, who is
Mm.
$200 less than him, big Greggy Marzu. I am so much more keen on Greg Marzu.
Yeah, mate, I can't disagree with you there. Similar boat to Tori Vasashek. I just can't see him having a worse year than last year. I can't see him going down in price. As we've already touched on, the Knights have a great draw. I think he's a very low risk buy. Same as exactly the same as Roger. Pretty much very low risk buys. You're not going to get anything less than what you pay for them, which is sort of what we're looking for from round one. Yeah. Why do you like him so much, mate?
Mate, I've always been a fan of Big Greg. Last year it wasn't as good of a season. I still had him all last year, but it was really the season before where he's on that left edge, as we mentioned, KP's favoured left edge. Man, he is a bit of a wrecking ball as well. He's a tackle buster, he's an offloader, and he knows how to score the try line. We've seen him, I believe it was only 2 years ago, go up to almost 800K. Like this is one of those
Yeah.
Supercoach guys that can put on a score and that can go on a run and that does have a bit of base sort of thing. Now, I think at 513K, it's the same as kind of RTS and all these other guys. Like, just great buys,
Yeah.
especially at 16% ownership. Like, for me, it's juggling. How do I fit all these good players in my side, which is
Yeah.
the kind of struggle we're having at the moment because you can't obviously have them all. But yeah, look, I'm just massive on Big Greggy. I've been a big fan of him ever since his debut at the Titans, and yeah, I just love watching Greg Marzu play because he's always a good watch as well. He's always a bit entertaining to watch.
Yeah, definitely agree, mate. And one other thing I'll touch on is that he started scoring a lot less at the back end of last year. Bradman Best was out. And oftentimes he does those tip-ons and he attracts defenders. Similar to what you said with Joey Manu attracting defenders for Dom Young. Best does that for Marju, and I think Best being back this year is key for another key factor for Greg. Um, and I really do like, yeah, I do like the buy. I can't knock it. Same as Roger. I just don't see him going down in price. But will say this that for 100K more, it seems like a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a few people would disagree with this. I would rather pay for Dylan Lucas. I, yeah, look, I just prefer Dylan Lucas. If you had to pick one, mate, who would you pick out of those two?
That's tough because I got both in my side at the moment. On the
Same.
spot, I'd say Marzu has more upside potential, but I think Dylan Lucas will average more. And the fact that he's got that duel as well would kind of lead me towards Dylan Lucas. But I think Greg is going to go on a bit of a run, especially to start the season. I think he's going to rise up in price. I think he's great value. So yeah, if I could only have one, I would probably go with Dylan Lucas, but it's super tight, and I'm super keen on both those sort of players at the moment.
Yeah, as am I, mate. They're both on my side, which going back a bit in the video, that's part of the reason I didn't go with Ponga. With the buy in round four, I know that you're all for picking all three of these guys, and I think they're all great purchases. I can't have three guys with a buy in round four. It's putting too much stock in one team with an early buy and a team that I don't even know how well they're going to go as well. I'm happy to pick two of them. And for me at the moment, because of the positions, I'm leaning towards picking Greg and Lucas, fading KP and going with Walsh. That's where my team's at the moment. But geez, that'll be a scary watch. Not owning Ponga, and I'm not sold on it. I just can't pick three of those guys. I'm quite heavy on that. I think it's you're gonna have to trade one of them. You can't carry all three of those guys going into round four. That's like, in my opinion, you're suffering too much. But obviously, it sounds like you don't feel the same way.
Yeah, I'd say to that, watch me. I think you definitely can. I think, especially with the jewels, someone who I was keen on, who we'll get to very shortly, was Jack Bird, who I was planning to have him and Dylan Lucas kind of intertwined and being able to flick them round along with a lot of the front row forwards and second row forward jewels I have, just to be
Yeah,
able to make it work and just be able to run with all three of them. Now the Jackbird players we'll get into shortly, that is kind of a bit of a spanner in the works. But just before we move on down to him, I just wanted to briefly touch on Stephen Crichton quickly. Did you
yeah.
have any cheeky comments on him? Because he's someone that, for someone who's keen on the dogs and whatnot, I think he could be a bit of a smoky pod sort of thing.
I did, mate. I looked at him and I looked at Tracy. I would be more keen on Crichton, believe it or not. He averaged 60 and 64 a couple of seasons ago, albeit that was in a Panthers side. He relies very heavily on attacking stats, but he's the main man at the Bulldogs. And with their draw, I quite like the buy. I can't knock it with Karaz going down as well. I would obviously prefer Karaz next to him, a good finisher. Um, but I don't mind it. Would pick him over Tracy. Would I pick him over Marju? That's be very hard to. I wouldn't, and I haven't done that. But it is tempting as a bit more of a pod play. And same with Ali Tower as well. They're like put them in the same bucket. Like very tempting to go with. Because just a bit of excitement. That's what you want in your centre wing, but not someone that I have in my side at the moment. But yeah, Critter, very good player, probably the best centre in the world. And yeah, I like their draw. So I like it as a pod play. Do you have any thoughts on him as a pod play at all? Or
Yeah, I would be interested in him as well. Obviously, I just don't have the space, and as you mentioned, I kind of prefer a Marzu and an RTS and a Dylan Lucas and a Sarko to him. But I think, yeah, look at 520K a year now under his belt with the doggies. Doggies did pretty well last year. They're You're touting them to do the same sort of thing this year. I think with the captain, and he will have that extra leadership. I think he will definitely improve on his 53 average. And I think it is a bit of a value buy. It is just compared to some of these other options, I don't see him having that much upside compared to someone like a Greggy Marzu or whatever. But yeah, look, I think if you're keen on the dogs, if you're thinking they're going to have a good year, I definitely couldn't argue with the buy.
yeah, agree, mate.
So moving on now to maybe we've touched on Jack Whiten previously, Campbell Graham, we won't
We'll
bother
touch
touching
on
on.
Skelton, mate.
But yeah, Skelton
Yeah,
is someone who I kind of do want to touch on. So speaking of the doggies, a former doggy himself joined us at the end of the last season and is now a
yeah,
Toners. Look, I love this kid. We don't have that much of a sample size because he's only played bugger all matches, but
yeah,
from what I've seen, everything I've seen, I love. Like he just turns everything to gold. He's quick, he's athletic, he's got that strong build. He can bot players off. I think he is a very interesting pick as well. Now, this goes into the same caveat as you can't have them all and you kind of got to pick your poison. But at sub 500K, I think he's great value. I think if you can't quite get up to a Marzu or an RTS, I think he is definitely a very, very reasonable filler sort of spot at that sub 500K. There is a bit of queries and question marks as to how will he go on sort of the backline of the Tigers, but I think as I've said, there's only a small sample size, but from everything I've seen, this kid looks like an absolute goer. So someone I'm definitely interested in. How about you?
yeah. Definitely interested in him, mate. I actually have my doubts just based on the last team list. I don't think he's going to start in round one. But look, we'll see. I actually think they're going to go. Taruba has been training on the left, which is where Skelton's currently playing at the moment, or at least he played the last trial game there. I think they're going to actually pick Staines ahead of him on the right hand side, which would be devastating for super coaches. The flaws to his game in real life is his defensive reads. They're absolute, like they're atrocious. Similar, he's exactly the same as Greg Marju, I feel like. Such a good meat eater. He takes these big, strong runs and carries. He's an okay finisher, but his defense and his reads are just atrocious. To put it politely, like he will let tries in on his wing, because he just doesn't have the footy IQ, and I think that's the way Benji's leaning. And obviously, if he's not picked round one, then he's not an option. And if he is picked round one, then a couple poor defensive reads, and he could be out of the side again. They've got a young winger, starts with a L, La Lily or something.
Oh, Lally
Um,
or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, Lally, and also Staines as well. I don't rate Staines, but I think we could see them go with Staines and Taruba on the wings. Yeah, it's just one of those TLT watches. Obviously, if he's named round one, he's an interesting option. But for me right now, I don't actually think he's going to be named in round one to start.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. And yeah, as we've kind of caveated throughout all these preseason podcasts, we don't obviously know the TLT lineups for round one, so this is all kind of based on that they might make it. But yeah, he's definitely one to kind of maybe wait and see to see if he's named, because I think, as you mentioned, it would be a bit disappointing to see Staines named over him, but the Tigers kind of actually have a bit of backline depth for the first time in seems whatever for ages. So I'm
Hmm.
sure he'll get a chance, no doubt, throughout this season. So it's definitely one to watch, I would like to say.
Yeah, agree, mate.
Moving on now, we'll quickly touch on both these players as a group, Casey McLean and Mark. I won't even bother with the
Uh,
surname there.
no, Wong and Nitawase.
Any interest in either of these two?
I no, absolutely zero interest in Mark. Do not go near him. He's not gonna like he. From the word is at the moment that Billy Smith will miss round one, with an injury, but he's their left centre. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And Toya is locked into the right centre role. I think that's their centres going forward. And Nwanga Nitawase is going to be a sort of utility role for them. That's why he's trialled at centre. We know he can play the wing, and he even spent a bit of time at fullback in the trial. Any injury to the back line, he's going to come in. But I don't think he's. I'm almost certain that he won't be the centre when Billy Smith is healthy, and he's not going to start when their team's fully healthy. He's sort of their utility. So zero interest in him. Casey McLean, I believe is going to play left centre with Alamotti on the wing, which is a bit surprising for me because I thought it would be the other way around. Casey McLean, we saw for the Kiwis, he was on the left wing and he scored 3 or 4 tries. And Alamotti's traditionally been a centre back at the Dogs. But seems like Casey McLean's going to be the centre and Alamotti's going to be the wing, which I like less for Casey. I would prefer him on the wing. He's also on a new look edge with Papali'i and Blaze Talangi. So, look, I like him as a player. He's a very exciting player. To start with, I just think it's too much money, though. What are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I'm not really as similar with you. I'm not really interested in either of them. As you mentioned, they both got flaws. They got obviously there's no job security with Mark, and then Casey McLean has switched positions, which I was a bit surprised at as well. So yeah, look, I I do like him a lot more on the wing compared to center, because I feel like your wingers score a lot more of the tries compared to the centers. So yeah, no real interest in either of those to start off with. So we'll keep moving on because it's another long podcast for you
Yeah,
guys.
we'll have to smash through these last few, mates. We'll go on to Jack Howarth, I think, which is someone that we're both very keen on, mate. Why are you keen on Jack Howarth?
I think we've kind of seen he has been. I'm sure everyone's heard of Jack Howarth by now, being one of the next up and coming things, and I kind of like we've heard that for the past 5 years, but it was only last year and at the back end of last year where we kind of saw his potential and just how good this guy actually is. Again, he is still quite a young kid, quite a young man, but I think I'm already backing Storm to be the premiers this year. I think in that back line and with the skills and the potential he has, I think he's extremely underpriced. I think to get a bit of part and involvement in the Storm team and attack. I think he's a great buy at 420k. We saw last year he's got a great base. He can get through work, but he's also got that attacking ability that he can break the line. He can do a couple shimmies and break a couple tackles and get the offload going. So yeah, I think 12% ownership. He is someone that I'm super interested in. What about you?
I'm very interested in him. I've been watching this kid play since he was about 15 years old. He's a Queensland boy, went to Brisbane Boys College, and he actually played footy with my brother and a couple of Queensland sides too. He's always been highly touted, been one of the most talented kids within that age group, and I was surprised that it took so long for him to get a crack in first grade, but we finally saw it last year. And I think, that spot's his now on the left centre, and he's only going to get better. In the grand final last year, you saw he was busy. He made a couple of mistakes, which is typical from a young centre, but he does he does try hard and look for runs, but he's just an exciting player, and he plays in a red hot Melbourne team, who I expect to, they're premiership favourites this year for a reason. And he is the one Melbourne Storm player that I have. Obviously, the downside is the buy in round 2, but the thing with centre wing is that you've got 7 of them to pick, and he's 400k. So when you pick someone like Howarth in your centre wing, you're generally from round 1 you're playing a bit of centre wing roulette anyway. So it's not as big of a loss at that price tag and in the position, having a buy as it would be picking like Munster, Hughes, or Grant, because you only get to pick 2 in the position and they're more highly priced. I think Howarth can't go down as well, similar to what we've said with Marju and Roger. That's their floor. They're not going to average any less. That's my belief with him anyway. So I think he's a very good buy.
Yeah, it sounds like we're both pretty keen on Jackie Howarth. Now, moving along, we got Tyron Munro. Any interest here? I kind of feel
there was interest, not anymore. Not with Latrell Campbell, not with all these injuries. Can't touch him. Can't touch a Bunnies winger with no Latrell and with potentially no Latrell and potentially no Cody Walker. No way. No, not doing it at 400k.
Yeah, look, I agree exactly that. I was a little bit keen leading up into the season, but obviously we've got all the news now with all the injuries at the Bunnies, and yeah, look, I've got no interest now. We're kind of touched on there's plenty of other gun options or cheap options around this sort of price anyway. But yeah, look, for a guy that has no base, I think he's an exciting watch. But yeah, for Supercoach reasons, absolutely not interested at all. Now, moving along again, I know we touched on him last week, but since TLT has come out this week, we've seen Jack Bird named on the bench. And now, as you mentioned last week, you weren't really keen on him. And now this kind of has thrown a bit of a spanner into the works for me, because he was someone, as I've mentioned, I was keen on running Jack Bird and Dylan Lucas and being able to switch them in between. But now I'm just not sure. I think it's a real wait and see as to how many minutes he gets on the weekend. I think if he still gets 50 to 60 minutes, I'm happy with that. But if he's only getting 40 minutes, my interest in him completely subsides. Like it really is for me now. It's a wait and watch, and obviously we won't have the teams list till not next week, but the week after for the Tigers. So there is a bit of time, and you don't have to rush or make a decision on him just yet. But yeah, that has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works there. How many minutes do you see him playing now?
Look, I wasn't keen on him to start with, and that was with the assumption that he was going to start at lock. I didn't have faith in the minutes or his game as a player. Something we should add is that Clemmer's he's gone now to the Dragons. I think that's effective immediately. So that opens up a spot for Fanua Pole. In the front row. It might open up more minutes in the middle, but regardless, Jack Bird is someone that I'm not keen on, and him being named on the bench further cements that. Like, I will not be going near him. I'm happy to watch him. I don't think he's going to hurt you at all playing in the middle. I think you've got to go spend your money up or down, and I wouldn't be picking him. But obviously, 28% of coaches feel differently about that. The duel's handy, but I just can't touch him.
Yeah, I think we'll get a better indication, I suppose, after the trials this weekend with a somewhat foolish squad from the Tigers. Obviously, there's no Appy, there's no Taruva, and there's no Lawai. But apart from that, it will be an interesting watch, because we see Twali at the 13 jumper, which is a bit of a change of role for him. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how he kind of develops. But yes, as you mentioned there, I think obviously we're not on front row forward mentions or talks at the moment, but Fiona Pole, he comes into contention big time for me. I think at his price, like, he's someone I'm really interested in, especially with the duel. But we can talk about him in another episode. Moving on to try and get through the rest of these centre wings, we'll quickly touch on Jesse Arthurs, who I believe you had last year. And have you learned your lesson, sort of thing? What are your thoughts on Jesse Arthurs?
No way. Absolutely no way. Look, he got man of the match in the All-Stars game the other game. Might lure a couple of more people in. And, obviously the Broncos, I believe, are going to do a lot better this year and to start the season. I I don't hate it though, because he's quite cheap and he could, I do believe in the Broncos. He can score a couple of tries, but if he without those tries, he's gonna do nothing for you. You need him to rack up tries, which he can very well do with their draw and how well I think the Broncos are going to do. But I would much rather wait if he's scored a bunch of tries in round 1 and 2 and he's going to set for a big price rise. Then I'll jump on. I'm not going to start with him. Start with him though, and even if I did start with him, I would have no confidence in playing him at all. He's someone that you wait and see how he goes. If he's jagged a couple of tries, which he can very well do in the first couple of rounds, then happy to jump on, make a bit of cash. But with that's basically the only way he's going to score well at all. He needs to get tries, and that's pretty much my take on him. He's a wait and see.
Yeah, look, I agree with that as well. I agree with that strategy. He's someone I definitely wouldn't be starting with. I think, as you kind of found out last year, he actually became a bit of an AE nightmare. He's one of these blokes that can become your AE sort of thing just because he has no base and is that terrible. But as you mentioned, if he does grab a couple tries early on and looks like to have a real low BE, he's someone I definitely wouldn't oppose being jumping on, hoping that he gets a bit of attack, hoping the Broncos are fire and are hammering his edge. But yeah, to start off with, he's just someone, as you mentioned, I like that sort of wait and see. If he grabs a couple meat pies early doors and looks like he's going to make a good bit of cash, he's someone I would be jumping on rather than starting with him and having to jump off sort of
Yeah,
thing.
agree, mate. And he can definitely lose you money at that price. Like, one person, we'll keep scrolling down, but someone that not many people are talking about is Isaiah Tass. I know we've talked about these Bunnies injuries. A key thing to note is that Latrell's out. He will goal kick, I believe, for the Bunnies. Question is how many points do they put on without Latrell, which I don't know as many. He's very cheap, and I believe, is going to play on the right wing, with Campbell Graham and Wyden in the centres. And I'm not sure if Campbell Graham starts round 1 or what the goal is there, but with the broken hand, I would assume he's not. So maybe he plays centre. That's where he played in the trial. But in short, I wouldn't be interested in him at centre. If he was on the wing and he was goal kicking, then potentially. If he's just on the wing and Latrell's back, then maybe as well. Like, I don't hate it, and I don't feel like enough people are talking about him. What are your thoughts? Have you thought about Isaiah Tass at all?
Yeah, look, as you kind of mentioned, I'm not really keen on any of the bunnies now. As you mentioned though, if he is kicking and Latrell's kind of out for a bit of a period of time, like it's a great price, right? 330K for a winger in a bunnies team. Obviously not the bunnies that we've kind of got to know and love over the past 10, 15 years of watching footy. But like, look, I can't argue with the buy. I wouldn't be jumping on early doors. I think it's kind of one of you have to wait and see. TLT comes out, you kind of see where he's playing. I wouldn't be interested at center. It'd have to be at wing and kind of with goal kicking confirmed and Latrell out
Yeah,
for sort of like a couple of weeks where to pique my interest. But if that happens, like yeah, I'm sure his ownership will increase, sort of thing. But without that, I wouldn't be touching him. Now, someone who I think's ownership should decrease because I believe it's been confirmed from Robbo that he won't be fit for round 1 is Billy Smith. Now, this poor bloke just can't catch a break from injuries. He is
yeah,
he is so injury prone, and like when he's on the field, right, he is a gun. He can get to his work. He's got the attacking stats in him. He can hit a tackle. He can hit a line. It's just he is so injury prone. And now at 320K, I absolutely love the price, but he just can't stay on the pitch. And as I said, it's already been confirmed that he will be missing round 1. So he's just someone I wouldn't be starting with. And it'd be kind of similar to a Arthur's. You kind of, if he's not starting round 1, you just wait and see how they come back, see how they go. If they put on a couple good scores, you can easily go up to him, right? He's only
yeah.
320K. But to start the season off, I think that 20% ownership will be dwindling.
That's it, mate. Yeah, rumored to not be playing round 1, and then he's got the Panthers in round 2 if he even is back. So price rises don't occur after 3 rounds of playing. So I don't mind. I do think his value averaged 54 a couple of seasons ago, but yeah, as you touched on, he's so injury prone. With him out round one, we get to have a look, and then he also plays it goes straight into the Panthers, So I don't mind the idea of just, I definitely 100% think that left centre spot, when healthy, is his. So I think the job security is 100% there. Robbo's always shown full faith in him than in him and his NRL future, and I think I'm very confident in saying that. So you could just sit him there and not use a trade, because he's definitely underpriced and he's cheap. But I just think that yeah, it's something I'm tossing up. I'm not sure. Depends on how many centre wing cheapies we get, on whether I sort of start with him or just fade him completely and wait and see how he goes. Would you consider him for round one, even though he's out?
Nah, look,
Yeah,
I'd even be way more interested in a TAS, someone that will actually make money than just sit on your pine, do nothing. As you said,
yeah,
tough game in round two. That's even if he's back round two. Like, Robbo's not going to rush him back. It's a long season for the Bunnies, for the Roosters, sorry. He has got so many injury issues, as like the Robbo will make sure he's all right and all good to go before he sets him back on the park. But once he is on the park after a couple games, he's got that confidence back. He's definitely someone I think I would love to own. I agree. I think he is a gun when he's on the pitch. It's just, when is he going to be on the pitch? So yeah, I wouldn't be starting with him, especially if he's not named in round one. I would much prefer even a TAS, as we've mentioned. But yeah, just someone I wouldn't be really looking at. Now, someone that everyone appears to be looking at pretty much like
yeah.
40% ownership now from Supercoaches. And to be honest, I can't really disagree. What are your thoughts on Jackson?
Yeah, mate. Let's group all these cheapies together, and we'll wrap it up. So we got Jackson Purdue, we got Sione Finau from the Dragons, we got Jesse McLean, Savalio Tamale, and we've got Rob Toyer. So I'll start us off real quick with real quickly in the shortest way possible. Purdue and Toyer, I believe, have the spots locked down. Laybot's still coming back from injury, and I think that he could take over Purdue. Was a bit of a risk. Toyer, I think, is an absolute must-own, and because he's going to be named, I've got 100% confidence in that. And Purdue is, for me, the second centre wing that I've got confidence in being named and starting round one, and he's got the most likelihood of holding the spot. The other guys, Jesse McLean, I don't believe will start. So I believe those 29% are gonna have to look elsewhere, because it will be Casey in the centres and Alamotti on the wing with Tungo and To'o on the right hand side. So don't think McLean gets a look in there. And Tamale is someone that I do think starts round one and could potentially hold the spot. Hopoate is out from the Vegas round with the birth of his child. So it's very risky. You could start with him round one and Hopoate comes back, nabs a wing spot. But from what I've seen, Hopoate's been playing in the centres in the trials. And I think Hopoate is going to play there and take over Seb Chris at left centre. Look, Tamale, from what I've seen, and as I've touched on with the Raiders, I don't like it. I don't hate it because he's got a bit of job security. Like, I feel like he's got a bit more job security. But I also, there's no one else. If I can, I will avoid going him, because he's a Raiders left winger. How much ball is he going to get outside of Ethan Strange, who runs the ball constantly? I think if I was to rank them, it would be Toya, Purdue, then Tamale. And I don't think Jesse McLean will play, so he'll be last. And Finau, this next guy, I think is a shot of starting. He's been named to start in both trials. The issue, he's 270k. The issue is Sloan and Christian Tuipulotu are both nursing injuries at the moment, and they could come onto those wing spots. So job security is not great as well there. So for me, it would be Toya, Purdue, then Tamale, then Finau. Finau's also got the buy in round 3, so he doesn't get a cash rise till round 4. And then last would be McLean, because I don't think he'll play. Do you agree with that, mate?
Yeah, look, I agree. Toya, as we've mentioned, kind of this year, there's not that many clear-cut cheapies, but I do believe Toya is one of them. And I think you just got to start with him. His basement price is 198k. Yeah, I only see him going up, and I think he could be a somewhat of a decent cheapie as well. I think you should just be locking him in your side. He would be the cheapie, the pick of the bunch for me as well. Second, I would also have Peugeot. I'd have him in two. Third is a bit interesting. I like Jesse McLean. If he's in the Panthers team for whatever reason, he would definitely he could even almost be my second if he is named. But I won't we won't bother talking about that because it's just hearsay at this point. But the one I am interested in a bit, who's not even super coached at the moment, is the Broncos center. Now I think if he does get the spot, because I do believe it'll be Stags and him in the centers. I think he
Shibasaki?
Shibasaki, yeah, correct. I think if Shibasaki gets that spot, he's going to be the one to go for, and I think he's going to fly up the rankings once he's added
Mm.
to Supercoach. Like he does seem like a bit of a goer. He seems like he's got a bit of base. He seems like he's got a bit of talent. For me, he would definitely be my third pick. He could even go ahead of Peugeot, depending on how well he plays in this trial. Obviously, there is a bit of a job security risk, but the loser here is Mariner because the wingers wouldn't like there's a center spot free at the Broncos sort of thing. And if Shibasaki gets that spot, he would be my pick out of all these. Because and then fourth, Tamale, I'm just not keen at all. Like as you
Mm.
mentioned, the Raiders, he's just one of these blokes I think he might just end up getting stuck with. He might make you like 50K at best, but like you just might not be able to upgrade from him, and all these other guys will just kick on. So for me, I wouldn't be interested in him really at all. I'd
Yeah.
rather go elsewhere, pay up even. I'd rather pay up 100K. I'd rather cut 100K from Dylan Lucas to Marzu and then upgrade Tamale up to another sort of more of an option at center wing because I do believe, as we've kind of mentioned in the front row forwards, that these plotter guys, and it's happened at centers, and for whatever reason, I swear it is always these Raiders wingers or centers that
Yeah.
grab these cheapy prices and get everyone's attention, but everyone just ends up getting stuck with them. So yeah, look, for me, I don't really have any interest in Tamale. But yeah, as I said, my my ranking would be the same. I think Toy is your pretty clear cut. He's your cheapie you got to go for sort of thing. And then depending on team lists, you could throw in McLean, you could throw in Shibasaki, and you can throw in Peugeot. I think Peugeot is definitely the most nailed out of all three of those. But out of the other two options, I like a lot more. And yeah, for me personally, I wouldn't be touching Tamale.
Yeah. Pretty similar thoughts there, mate. Great shout with the Shibasaki. He's a definite watch. If he's named round one and gets that center spot, he moves pretty highly up those rankings for me. Just under Purdue or thereabouts, pretty well. That's pretty much our center wing and fullback podcast all wrapped up. Before we head off, though, we may as well do a bit of a fullback ranking, I think, as well. We did a
Yeah.
cheapie rank, but I'm happy to give our top four ranks for fullback. Price, we'll go top five, price included. So for me, it goes Turbo as my one. Two is Walsh, then Ponga. Ponga 3, Yongi 4, and my 5, I'm going to say, is the Hammer.
Nice, mate. I like it. I'm gonna have the same one. Obviously, I think Turbo is the best. Two, I'm gonna go Ponga. Three, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Teddy. I'm gonna go Teddy at three
Jeez, at that price, eh?
at that price. Four, I'm gonna go the cheapie. Where is he?
Yongi.
Yeah, Yongi. And then five, I'm gonna go Buller. I
Really,
really am
yeah.
a bit keen on Buller this year. I do think he could be in for a bit of a big season. So yeah, those would be my top five fullback rankings at this point in time.
Yeah. Easy, mate. Yeah, thank you for another great app. And make sure to comment what your top five would be and who you agree with more. Fisher or myself with our fullback rankings at the end there. Thanks for another episode, Jacob. And it's been a pleasure to knock these out with you and keen to put out some more content. And thank you for all that listened.
Yeah, mate, it's been another good episode. Again, good episode with you on. We're getting pretty close now. It's only this weekend of the trials, and then it's next Sunday, everyone, that it all kicks off in Vegas. So get keen. We're almost there. The sleeps are almost over. We got the Vegas weekend. Obviously, the weekend is split. You have only the first two games in Vegas, so we'll only get TLT for those four teams, and then we'll get the rest of the TLT the following Tuesday, and then the rest of the teams will play that week. So it is a bit of chaos sort
Yeah.
of things to start off the season. So I think you kind of do need to get your strategy in order, particularly in the halfback sort of position. But yes, that we will all be discussing that. Plenty more content. We'll have another video coming out shortly. And yes, thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, as Xavier mentioned, on who your top 5 ranking is. And also another little shout out to join the league. I want to see as many of you guys in here as well. We've got 13 already just after a couple of days, which we're
Yeah.
super stoked with. So yeah, let's try and get this by the next episode. I reckon we can easily get 20 guys. So make sure you join up. Remember, whoever wins gets to join us on a podcast episode, and we get to kind of hear on your insights into everything else. But yeah, thanks for another episode, Xavier, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Easy. Thanks, mate. Catches.